Welcome to our introduction to investment assets for Acumatica. Today we're going to talk a little bit about our new product for Acumatica, investment assets accounting. And this is a great product for any organization that buys or sells investments and expects to make money doing that. That deals with a large number of transactions and would like to automate the process of tracking unrealized gains and losses, to track dividends, interest, accruals, amortization of amortizable investments like bonds, and also to automatically record realized gains and losses on those transactions. To begin with, we'll talk a little bit about how we set up trading accounts, which will be the vehicle by which we contain those investments. So from our investment assets homepage, we can see that you can track a number of different investments. We'll have a couple of examples in here, but first we'll just take a look at Amazon. So when we look at Amazon on the investment card, you can see that we have an ID that doesn't necessarily have to match the ticker symbol or the CUSIP ID. Now, it could be the same if you choose, but if you want to track these ID numbers with a little bit of a difference, you can. You can then set up securities IDs, which we refer to for investments, CUSIPs, or ticker symbols. So in this case, we're using a ticker symbol for Amazon. We can categorize our investments by type. We can also assign a class as well, which can imprint in the GL accounts from the class. There's also another way to be able to track different GL accounts for combinations of investments and trading accounts. All right, so currently we can see, the organization currently company-wide, we hold a certain quantity at the latest market value that we downloaded. These are the default accounts if we're not using the matrix posting accounts, which is much more granular for combinations of trading accounts and investments. On the options tab, you can see that we've got the ability to define this investment as either amortizable or not. And if it is amortizable, we do support either straight line or effective interest rate methodologies. We also have an expiration date. So if you're tracking calls and puts of options, we can track the expiration date of those particular options vehicles. And if you are having one investment as a hedge against another investment, we can indicate that within the investment record. We can also define the rules for accruing interest with 3 different day count conventions to support most bonds that are out there, either through 30, 360, actual 360, or actual 365. And we can compound on either just the face value or face value plus current accrued interest. We also have the ability to define a par multiplier. So for Treasury inflation protected securities, or TIPS, we can hold a par multiplier value that changes as those multipliers for TIPS changes as well. If it is interest bearing and has had an accrual, we'll see the date last accrued. We'll also be able to track information regarding activity. So when we do our market value downloads, we can bring down some of the information associated with those market value downloads to update the investment master here as well. All right, so that's one aspect of a holding, is going to be a particular investment within a particular trading account. So you can have an unlimited number of trading accounts. If we look at this particular trading account, we'll see that it's linked to a cash account. The cash account is going to be the cash balance of this investment trading account. As buys and sells occur, as we receive dividends or interest, the balance of that cash account is going to change to reflect the cash balance of the trading account. Now, if we want to define interest calculations on the cash balances, we can do that as well with our account types. And if we are defining whether or not to allow mark-to-market adjustments on a particular trading account level, sometimes we do it at the company level, sometimes we do it at the trading account level. And we have that ability to define it from either level. And that would be a question of whether we're using historical lower of cost or market or mark-to-market as a methodology for the valuation adjustments for unrealized gain and loss. Next, we have some ability to define some attributes or entities that this trading account belongs to. So we can define an unlimited number of funds that you can categorize each trading account to belong to. We can assign account custodians for the trading accounts, account managers. We also have the ability to define a funds transfer account. So if we're doing sweep transfers from this trading account, perhaps into a higher interest bank account, we can define that relationship so that you can record cash transactions in and out of those funds as part of the account cash transactions. And then also we have another ability to define entities that this trading account might belong to. So a lot of flexibility in terms of kind of defining a hierarchy of reporting. There are some GL accounts that come from the trading account, the investment trading account level. And you can see some of those if you record a management fee, for instance, or if you're putting in a private equity fee or something of that nature. So we have some those types of GL accounts defined at the trading account level. There are some user-defined fields. So if you need to track more information about these particular trading accounts, we have 10 user-defined text fields and 5 user-defined date fields. All right, so now that we've talked sort of the file folder or the entity that is going to contain the investment holdings when we purchase a particular investment, we do that through the investment transactions. So when I'm looking at this, I can see current holdings versus all records. And if I was manually keying it in, this is the screen it would look like. We also have an import routine to be able to import buys and sells. But when we're purchasing a particular investment holding, we would be coming into the investment ID and selecting the investment, selecting the trading account, which is going to default in our company cash account associated with that. And you can see we have the ability to either buy or sell at a particular price. So let's say I'm buying this at 3,000. And I'm going to buy 10,000, maybe 100,000 shares. And maybe I have a target price of 4,000 here. We also have the ability to track commission expenses, or to post the commission expense as well. So we might have some commission expense. This particular investment doesn't have any interest along with it, but if it was an interest-bearing investment, we could, as part of the purchase, include interest purchased along with that. If it's been accrued and is going to be paid at some point in the future. Additionally, we have 5 user-defined fees. Actually, we have 10 user-defined fees. My bad. And you can define what the labels of those fees and one of the setup screens that will default in here. So there are some countries in Africa that have a large number of financial transaction fees that get tacked on to every investment buy or sell. So we have given you the ability to handle that. And that may even become an issue in the United States at some point. It looks like they're starting to discuss additional financial taxes upon the buy and sell of investments. So that's something that we've built it right into the product to allow us to handle that. Again, we have the ability to define labels for user-defined text fields and date fields on the transaction level, as well as the cash transaction level, which we'll get to shortly. And then on the interest, these things don't really apply. So on this particular holding, so all we have to do here is save this. It's on hold. I can take it off hold and it's now balanced. And I can release that here, or we can release it from the release transactions window. So what we typically can do is either key in or import in those transactions like I just manually entered. And this will come up in a second. And you'll see we have a load records from file. If we go to upload, we just need to select a file that has the same headings, and it will automatically map just like any other upload in Acumatica. You can see in here the fields that we have here can be populated. From here, if you don't want to see all of them, maybe you don't need to see the face value if you're not dealing with amortizable investments. Or accrued interest. So anyway, we can bring these in and then we can release those transactions from here. I'll just click release all. This could be scheduled with the automation schedules, as you can see this little icon here. And now when I go back to investment assets, if I go to current holdings, I can see that I've got a current holding with the quantity remaining equal to the quantity purchase. And the reason I point that out is we can do partial sales. So we can sell partially. We have an automatic allocation system for allocating a sale against multiple holdings using a variety of different allocation methods that you can define in the preferences. Now, cash transactions that we might deal with would be things like dividends or interest, things of that nature. So when we come into the account cash transactions window, you can see I can add in a new transaction. I can select the trading account. I can select the investment. And this might be a dividend. So if it is a dividend, then it's going to automatically populate in our offset account. And we can put in, let's say 500. And if we want to link it to a specific transaction, we can select the particular transaction ID to link that dividend to. Save that. Again, this could be imported. So if we look at our import account cash transactions, we would have the trading account, the distribution type, etc. Would all be part of that upload into the account cash transactions. And we could release those account cash transactions or have it scheduled to automatically release as well. Now this is, we've done two things. We bought an investment and we have generated a cash transaction. Both are going to hit banking. So if we look at the release cash transactions here, you'll see that we have two transactions. One is the description of the original transaction. Let me put this sort descending. There we go. So in the by Amazon here, you can see if we drill back, we can drill back to the transaction that generated it. And we can see this cash transaction. Now we would probably have something that would automatically release these cash transactions on a scheduled basis as well. I'm just going to release these two for this particular demo because the other stuff's from prior demos. But you, in most likelihood, would have an automated schedule release that would release those. So you can see now the GL for both the investment transaction. And you can see on here, we've got the amount that hit the bank account, reducing our checking account. We've got the amount of the assets, cost balance in the investment assets account. And we've got $500 commission expense on the commission side of things. If there were more things like those extra fees or purchased interest, accrued, those would be additional GL accounts from here as well. All right, so we've talked about buying and creating investment holdings. We've talked about recording dividends, management fees, interest from accruals, or just interest revenue, bringing those dollar values into the system. Now, another thing we have is the ability to record market values. So one of the things that happens when we buy something is the current price gets updated because we bought it at 3,000. Now, the previous value was from a market value, and you can see that it was at 3630. So we should see something more like this when we do our investment market values. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select Amazon, and we are going to come in here and take this off hold and click download. And you can see that it's brought in the current value on this. And you can see it also brought in some additional information regarding current market value conditions. So we can go ahead and release this. And what that does is it updates the investment master. So if I go and look at the investment master now, I'll see this 35, 25, 50. And when we're looking at investment holdings, we're going to be tracking this last adjusted price, because the difference between the current price on the investment master and the holding last adjusted price is the amount of the unrealized gain or loss. And we need to record that and update this last adjusted price. So to actually do our let's say month end, right? At the end of the month, we would then come into valuation adjustments, and we would see that we have a last adjusted price of 3,000. We have a current price of 525.50. So we have 525.50 of unrealized gain per share times 100,000. So we're going to go ahead and process all on this. And then we're going to go to our finance and release transactions. And we're going to see down here, if I reverse this, we're going to see at the top, we've got this unrealized gain or loss journal entry. And we'll see that we've recorded a gain, credit to unrealized gain or loss. And then the investment contra is the offset account for unrealized gain or losses. This typically would be like an equity side of the balance sheet. This would be an offset or contra account on the investment assets side of things, on the asset side of the balance sheet. In our description, you'll see information about the original transaction. So you can see how much of a change there was per share on the unrealized gain or loss and the quantity that was involved in it. All right, so that tracks our unrealized gain or losses. And you'll notice one other thing too. Now our last adjusted price has been updated on this particular holding. So we now are tracking that unrealized gain or loss on that particular thing. Now, I did show you the investment valuations where we did the download or we manually entered. If you're dealing with an asset that doesn't have a ticker symbol, maybe it's property or gold or whatever it is, you might just key it in and just put the valuation price in and the valuation date. You don't need to populate all the rest of the information on that. But you can import those if you have a third-party administrator that you want to create those valuation records or those market value records. You can import a file. Same thing as we did with the investment buy sell and the investment asset, the account cash transactions. And then we can release those valuation records as well from here in mass. If we want to import and release the market values, we have that ability to do that with these two. We can also download market value records and create them for every single investment master that we have set up here. So that will go out and grab all of those. If we are looking at just updating interest balances, let's say we just want to take whatever the third-party administrator says is the interest balance, then we can import a file that just has the holding ID and the adjustment date and the balance. So maybe I do 9/30 as the adjustment date, and I have an Excel file that has the balances for each of these transactions that we have here. We could import in the amount of interest. Where is it? Right here. The accrued interest amount can be updated along with that date by importing those interest balances. And then it'll just make the adjustment to receivables and or revenue associated with that. All right, so we've talked about buy, sells, dividends, interest accruals, receipts, market values. We can do accrual of interest for those that are interest bearing. We simply change the date to the end of the month. And any transactions we have that are interest bearing would show up here with the old and the new accrued interest amounts that are going to happen. So we can preview based on a certain date and then process to create those or to update those holdings with the amount of interest accrued. Similarly, we'll have something on that for the amortization as well. So if you have any amortizable investments, you'll be able to say through a specific date, run the amortization. We've talked a little bit about the trading accounts, but we haven't talked about owners of those trading accounts if we're tracking percentage of ownership. So we do have the ability to define owners, and those owners can be linked to a trading account. So we have in here a couple of owners, or this owner is associated with this trading account. Looks like we got two of them there. That is incorrect. But we haven't really fleshed this full out yet. This is in development to be able to track for family offices, multiple owners, their percentage of ownership then is going to allow you to give reports to each of the owners on their the value of their holdings or their percentage of the holdings within the accounts that they have an ownership stake in. We saw on the trading account the ability to set up funds and securities, custodians, managers, investment types, and entities. So those would all be set up things for defining what entities have a relationship with the investment trading account. We talked about the matrix posting accounts. So this is for every combination of investment and trading account. We can define all of these different GL accounts, as well as any default fees if we want to default in on the combination of trading account and investment. Funds actually can have a fund type, so you can set up a secondary higher level of reporting that drills down from fund type down through fund, down through trading account. And then we also talked about the account interest types. I mentioned if you want to track either on a daily balance or average daily balance, the interest in your checkbooks, if it's material, you might want to check your bank to see that they're actually calculating your interest correctly for that particular trading account. So we do have that ability to do the interest. We haven't built that interest accrual process yet, but that is in the works, and you can see the ability to define it on here for a particular trading account type, and you could link that type to the trading account in terms of generating the receivable and recording the revenue on that particular thing. Investment classes are ways that you can default in distributions, and also have a target class mix as well that you can then utilize and check your reports against. And then on the preferences side of things, let's kind of show you the default valuation currency, whether we're getting the market value currency from the investment master, or is it always coming from the company's setup? Is the account cost method defined at the account level? If it is, then this is not specified. If it is defined at the company level, then we would define this cost allocation method here at the company level, and we don't have to define it at the trading account level. One of the other things on here is we can allocate costs. So when we're using this first in, first out, we can say allocate costs within the same trading account. We can include commission and cost if we want. If we do that, it would require you to use average cost as the cost allocation method. So we have in here, sometimes commissions are just a reporting thing. If we uncheck this, then it has no impact on the cash, and the GL distributions is simply attached to the investment purchases and sales as a informational item. Using the matrix posting accounts means it'll first look to see if there's a GL account defined at the combination of the trading account and the investment. And if it doesn't find anything there, then it defaults to the investment master to get the GL accounts for that. Whether or not we're using defining this at the account level or the company level. So if I'm defining this at the company level, then I'm just defining whether it's mark to market or whether it's historical cost or market for the unrealized gain or loss recognition. Lots of features in here that some of them have not been completely designed out, but will be in the future. These are based off of our Dynamics GP product and some of the features that were there, and we're just including them on the company setup so that we have them available for future development. So our transactions will have numbering sequences for all our different types of transactions and adjustment IDs. If you have there'll be an API key for the download of the market values that we utilize. There's an API key that you can define and get I believe it's a free API key that we utilize. Quantity and decimal places. We support out to 10 decimal places in the data. But you don't necessarily want to use 10 decimal places. So we let you change the user interface for how many decimal places on quantities and prices there would be. User-defined fields, you'll see there's cash user-defined fields, there's regular transaction user-defined fields, and then there's definition of fees. So we talked about those additional fees. Here's where we can set those up and what GL account those particular fees are for. So that is about it right now for investment assets. We do have this available for sale immediately. And if you are interested, please reach out to us. We would love to go through this a little bit more of a personal demo and discuss how it would meet your needs. And if there's any additional features that you think we should add in. At this point, I'm going to tie up this. Again, thank you for your time and your attention. This is Investment Assets for Acumatica from ICANN Software Solutions.